So what can you tell us about and what's coming up?
Well, I'm very excited that America's finally going to get to see more of our great episodes. The rest of the world has sort of gotten a sneak peek of the second half of the first 26. So season 1, we spent a lot of time sort of introducing the family unit. That is International Rescue. You know, they're sort of, when we begin the series, it's not too long after the disappearance of Jeff Tracy, the family patriarch, founder of International Rescue and sort of hero at large. And so they're really kind of coming to terms with that, finding their own voice, finding their own path, learning to function as a family and as a rescue organization in the absence of their father. So that sort of family dynamic is a big driver for season 1. We also introduced a few characters, namely Ko, who sort of the adopted sister of the team, and revealing a shocking secret of her own past. And so in season 2, that really comes into play. So in a lot of ways, season 2 is the season of Ko, dealing quite a bit with how she is functioning as part of the team, and in this sense, in the beginning, feeling very much as an outsider. For lots of reasons, because she doesn't have the same last name. She's not. Is she really part of the family? What is her role in the group? And does the secret that she's keeping from the rest of the Tracys, is that going to eventually lead to her not being a part of this anymore? So that's sort of a big part of it. And in the very end, truths are told, and as a part of that process, the Tracys and International Rescue risk losing everything. And so we have a really big, dramatic conclusion to season 2. There we go. Andres Williams, voice of the Hood.
Sorry, hello. Restroom break.
From TV After Dark, sir, question for you. And he was telling us before, the last group we had, they were saying how the story, you guys try to keep it to where it's, I think a lot of the kids shows has a lot more action, a lot more violence, and a lot of that holds the kids' attention these days. But you guys wanted to make sure that you engage with the other side of the family and, of course, the rescue and how to resolve issues without. How hard was that to try to stay away from the mass?
For me as a writer, it was amazingly easy and long overdue. I've done a gazillion action shows. I mean, that's like capes and explosion shows. That's sort of where I kind of that's my background. And not to say that I'm sort of ashamed of sort of intensity of those types of shows, but it was really nice for me as a writer to be able to tell the same story in a very different way. And I have young children myself, and this is one of the first shows that I've been excited to share with, because I don't have to worry about sort of that certain type of violence. It seems to sort of eke its way into kids' shows. We're focusing on a much different type of storytelling. It's all about selfless heroism, all about helping people. And we found that you can be engaging and be exciting and an action-filled show that captures the imagination of your audience, young and old. And without having guns and swords, and we have lots of explosions.
Plenty of explosions,
lots and lots of explosions, wanton, pointless, senseless explosions, because that is sort of built into the DNA of Thunderbirds. You can't end the Thunderbirds episode without a big giant explosion. So we certainly are not getting rid of the explosions.
But as a parent, I do think for us, we can appreciate a show that we can trust our kids to
Sure, absolutely. This originally was really a vehicle show. It was all about the toys, all about the ships. And we still hold true to that as well, but we're also telling a story about a family. And so characters in this were hugely important. I mean, if you sort of had any criticism of the original series, it's that the characters were not that interesting. To an uninformed viewer, they were hard to tell apart. They had sort of the same voice, quite literally, because people did the same voice for multiple characters. And so, for me coming into it, it was an absolute priority for me to be able to really give these characters a voice. No pun intended, so that they could stand out and be as interesting and as engaging as we would need them to be.
You've made some quite radical changes to the actual setup. I mean, not least the fact that Jeff Tracy, who was the sort of boss in the original series, is not there. So, I mean, what was the thinking there? So much?
That was a very difficult decision. Well, it was a difficult and it wasn't, in the sense that when I proposed it, I actually was surprised that I didn't get much resistance from ITV. And my logic was this, is that we have a very large cast. And all of them need to be, the spotlight needs to be on all of them equally. And when it comes right down to it, this is a show about the kids. It's about the Tracy brothers and KO as the centerpiece of International Rescue, as the centerpiece of the series. Jeff Tracy is a huge presence on the screen. He sucks the oxygen out of the story because he is right there in the center of everything. And it was going to be a real challenge to tell stories about the kids when Dad's right there looming over everything they do. And so my proposal is, what would it be like if we took him out of the picture and see how they operate in the absence of their father, who was such a big presence in everyone's lives? And so it becomes less about what does Dad want us to do, and now more about what would Dad do. And so in season 1, that was a real big part of the storytelling process, of seeing how they react in the absence of Jeff. But interestingly enough, as we found throughout the episodes, even though Jeff isn't there, we feel him in every episode. I mean, sort of the legacy that he inspired is always there. So, it seemed like kind of a radical change at first, but once we really put it to practice and can see the end result, at least to me, I feel, and at least sort of the feedback that I've gotten so far, it seems to have been well received.
Just the mystery of where he is, do you see that as something that you can play out over a long period?
Yes, we intend to. Yeah. I mean, no one ever really dies in these shows, and though, right now our sort of, the sort of, we just say he's missing in action, but we have a lot of stories to tell without Jeff in the picture, and we're going to continue to do that for a while, and then we'll see where it goes.
Since your show has an international fan base from the original, have you put any thought into the new episodes with the more international spin or cultural influences, any of that?
Well, the team that the show is about is no coincidence called International Rescue. So their rescues do take place all over the world.
Yeah, and very occasionally we're called upon to bring. We need a sort of South American sounding engineer or a Norwegian polar
right.
explorer.
Fortunately, Andres is fluent in Spanish, and David Menken, who plays Virgil and Gordon, speaks Norwegian. So we sort of have our a few of our bases covered. But yeah, we tend to try to make. We tend to try to make this, as much as we can, a kind of global show in its scope, in its visuals. I mean, this takes place all over the world. It's not based in sort of generic North American city. I mean, this is a show that is produced in London. It's the writing is done in Los Angeles. Most of the production itself is done in New Zealand. Our animation is done in China. So just the scope of the series as a whole is global already. So it's not that far of a leap to take it to the next step there.
How's your relationship? How did you discover the show? You would have been more exposed to it, obviously, but I had honestly never even heard of it until I married a Welshman. So, for you especially, and then do you have memories of growing up with it?
Well, first of all, congratulations on marrying a Welshman. Being half Welsh myself, I can see how that would be.
They're awesome.
I'd obviously heard of it before. I don't know. Absolutely.
It was a harder show to discover in the United States because it was actually, when it was originally produced, the whole idea was it was to be sold into the American market. That's why the Tracys are North American. They don't have British accents. They live. So this was supposed to be an American show for an American audience, and as bad luck would have it, when the show was brought over here to sell, it didn't quite make it there. So more went into a syndication model where little markets would have it here and there. So it never really took off the way it did in the United Kingdom and other places across the globe. So my experience was, it was on the PBS affiliate at Saturday night at like 10 o'clock, like right after Doctor Who. And on the nights that my parents would let me stay up, I'd see it and I'd be like, that's kind of weird. It's like puppets and kind of a thing. And so I would change a channel and go watch Saturday Night Live or something like that. So I was familiar with it, and I knew it was a big deal, but it wasn't sort of ingrained into my DNA like a lot of people that grew up in the UK, which had it on a daily basis. To many viewers around the world, I mean, this is their Star Wars, this is their Star Trek. And so coming into it as a grown-up, many years after the original show came out, I sort of had to understand how important this was to a lot of people. And I can see why, after reacquainting myself with the original material. I mean, even today, it holds up.
Do you think when the show first came out, the world was in kind of a lot of turmoil back in the 60s, at least in this country, with the Vietnam War going on and all of the generational upheaval and all of that? Here we are in 2016, and very little has changed.
Interesting how that happened, isn't it? 50 years later, almost to the year that
it's different turmoil, but some of the same kind of hatreds and international fears about each other and stuff like that.
It was a very sort of unifying show when it first came out because it was future thinking. It was a show about a bright, positive future where technology and innovation and creativity and all those sorts of things that sort of was, that filled the audience with this incredible sense of wonder. You look back at, this is a show where people had a rocket ship in their garage. And right in the center of the, in the heat of the Cold War, before we put a man on the moon. So I mean, rocket ships and those sorts of things were absolutely fascinating and captured our imagination. It was a what if kind of show, and so they set the bar really high with that, because you think about it today. Yeah, we send satellites up and space shuttles, and it barely makes the news. So, kids aren't as excited about red rocket ships as they were in 1965. So you really sort of have to take it to the next level, and we're really lucky that while we use a lot of the same production methodologies and live-action miniatures and real model sets to give it that beautiful visual style that was pioneered by the Andersons, we also have cutting-edge computer-generated animation that we can put on top of that. So the look of it is absolutely striking. And in that sense, we are able to design a world that is every bit as forward-thinking and filled with the sense of wonder and what if as the original show was.
I was talking yesterday with some of the people from Star Trek over at CBS, and that's what it's kind of like, whoa, Star Trek, 50 years. It was the same kind of show. It was a very positive outlook, a world that was unified. Didn't matter where you came from or what planet you came from or whatever, but you had this beautiful technology. And again, it was the same generation now being reborn again into a new series.
There is sort of the easy way to tell a story is through conflict. That is sort of in most cases the driver of story. And our sort of goal with Thunderbirds is to let's tell a story without conflict. So that by itself is a real difficult endeavor. How do you tell a compelling, interesting, engaging story without conflict? And not necessarily dramatic conflict, because we do have that, but conflict meaning two people at each other's throats, or someone purposely trying to do something bad to someone else. Our answer to that was, let's make a show about people helping other people and finding challenges in the very act of helping those people. You can go on the TV news and a little girl falls down a well, and it takes 36 hours to get them and not a whole lot's going on, but aren't you riveted? You can't look away. You're not changing the channel. There's something innate in our human nature about the process of watching experts do something really well and watching them do it. Firefighters, policemen, engineers, EMTs, people that are actually out there putting their lives at risk to help other people. And we know what the stakes are. If they don't succeed, the outcome is grim. So that I think is sort of the angle that we're approaching Thunderbirds. Yeah. And of course, we have fun, cartoony villains to throw a wrench in the works.
You have to, yeah. Obviously, it can't be all about natural disasters. There has to be some sort of human element of danger. Yeah.